Now that you kind of know how my front-end framework works, I'm going to kind of show you an example of how it's been used right now in my web app that I'm making, which is a single-page application. So right here, we're just on this dashboard page, which just has the welcome message for the user. So again, that's going to be pulling information from our, oops, didn't look at, grab that. So it's just pulling information from a model. And so the way I've got it set up is each page has its own specific model attached to it. So when we pretty much go load that view for the page, it's doing series of 3 different things. It's grabbing the HTML for that page. It's grabbing the data needed to display that page. And it's also, if needed, going out to the server to fetch some more data. And it's also adding any kind of JavaScript that page may need to run. So all this way it works is my data, my backend server, all it is just an API, so it's stateless. And so what happens is when you log in, it pulls that information back and it loads it into the client's local storage. And then as we want to do things and manipulate, go to different pages, it pulls that data and populates it into the respective model needed to display properly for each page. And I'll go a little bit in detail in a second to show you how that's actually all doing stuff. So that's the dashboard. So another feature besides just the client-side routing, of course, every time we click on a different page, it's using client-side routing. It's not actually hitting our server. So that is really cool, really efficient. That gives us this really fast response time. We don't have to worry about refreshing the whole entire page and stuff like that because it's a nice, seamless experience. So if we go to click on this, you can see that we are using a component to generate this. This component is actually being used to be iterated over a list, and so we're going to pass in a list of labels, and it's going to generate a table row for each of these. So I can click on these, and this just takes us to a simple two-way binding model kind of interface to where you look up here, when we clicked on the actual label, it routed to a new page called label/edit/to, and using our client-side routing, we're able to extract this route ID and use that to pull back the proper label in our local storage to go ahead and edit that. And so we loaded that. So we read that value we need for the label. We loaded that label from storage. We've bound that label to our model. So we loaded it into the page model for labels. And then we've then populated these fields with those values, which we can then go ahead and edit and change and do whatever we want. So we can call this, rename it to test label 2 and save it. And now we can see we've updated that label here. So I'm just going to stick it back to kind of what it was before and then save that back. So we got, as you can see, routing between all the different pages all set up. We've got easy way to generate all of our list items to fill those out. We've also even got a way to have a nice easy form to set up all those things. So it's kind of really how I'm using that front-end framework to really kind of like make my page generation easy, because I'm not having the server generate this content. I have to generate all this content inside the client to make sure it's fast and speedy and all of that. Because our server is stateless, it's not going to be able to parse that data and send it back to us. It's just sending us new data we need. So we need to do all the page generation on the client side. So it's where my front-end framework comes in handy, because it allows us to template out all of our content on our client. So that's really kind of the basics of the features. So I'll go to labels real quick, and we can just go to our project real quick. And so I'm going to go to the labels folder, and index.html is that basic labels page. And you can see right here we have our header right here for our labels for our page name, and then we've got down here we're bound that model for our page models, and we go through the whole list passing in all the data for it. And then here's the template for each table row, where you can see it's just setting those values in to display that table. Same thing when we hit the edit button, went to the HTML for that. This is just that HTML form right here. And each one has, its own JavaScript behind it that handles page operations for it. So that's really the basics of this site. So I guess I'll go to the index page for you real quick. So this is the actual page that returns from the server. So when you initially load the page from the server, it's just pulling back all the general stuff, or it's pulling back our framework, loading all of our views, loading up our custom JavaScript, stuff like that. This is just kind of setting up that header. And this main is that central content we've got. And here's a couple of modals that are being used for just to display different error messages and stuff later. There's that footer that has all of our navigation links on it. Main is where all of our content when we load a different pages is being stuck in. So right now it's empty, but again we got client-side routing that will go ahead and go through all this stuff and stick that data in there. So just again to give you an example of how this client-side router actually works, we're able to just create a new instance of a router, and then right here, here's me creating my views, which I define in my JavaScript elsewhere. And then we can actually handle this kind of similar to how Node.js would work. So we take our router, we can add a route, and right here we pass in a regex expression. So I'm saying on any pattern, regex pattern, and we're going to go ahead and call this. And so this is a logging middleware right now. So this says, and we're going to, anytime we get a request, let's just go ahead and log that request out to our console, and then next is going to call the next thing in the pipeline. So it's going to continue to do other routing, just like we would see in like a node type of pipeline for middleware. So we added routes for all the different pages we defined up here. So we added one for the login, the sign out. This reload session is another piece of middleware. So if we refresh the browser, we just need to pull everything back from cache or stuff like that. That's what's going to happen here. Again, and then here's all of our pages to handle our routing. As you can see here, here are some of our routes coming in for our getting all those route IDs and stuff like that for those route parameters. And that's basically how the routing works. There's not a whole lot to it. As far as anything else to show you, I can kind of just show you how those views actually work. So where do I have that code at? So we have, I guess, we have scripts, we have Views.js. And Views.js is a lot of code here that just says how each view is laid out. But basically, we have the base view, and it's got a couple different methods. And this one right here is the render functions. This is what we call if you go back and look. We're telling it to pass in for the route for each thing we want to execute on the route. We're executing the render function of the view, and that render function is basically just saying, hey, get the HTML for this page if there is any, get any data for this, if we need a model for this page, and then get any JavaScript for this page. It's going to handle all that loading, and then it's going to add all that stuff to our page and place that properly inside of it. So that's really about it. It's pretty simple and straightforward as far as how this framework is kind of used. And again, this website isn't very pretty at the moment because I was just trying to get it up and running. But again, I'm going to show you kind of how it makes things really easy. So I'm going to click on this budgets real quick. You see we got like a whole bunch of graphs here that get generated. So I go to that view, for instance. So budgets, the summary, I think is what it is. HTML, like this is the only amount of code, the HTML, that's for this page right here. So we have all of these graphs right here, but we're able to template it out using our front-end framework and just make it really, really small. So that's one benefit of using this front-end framework. Because we can template and make components, we can really make things just simple. But those graphs actually are being used by generated by the chart.js library. So right here you see our page, setting the page header. We're creating the legend where our data will be inserted, I think. I don't know what that is. And then we have this component where we're going to pass in all of our chart information. And from that chart information, it's going to use this template right here to create each chart section. And what this chart section is going to do, it's going to go in for the information we passed into it. and we're going to go and generate a chart for it, and that chart is being generated by this JavaScript